All right, so this is pretty cool because I don't really do a lot of these live streams anymore on my particular channel. I do a lot of more recent live streams with Amit, with doing Palantir Weekly and some of the other opportunities when I get a chance to hop on his channel. But I kind of wanted to kick it off specifically about how I met Amit, and I think it was probably, I don't want to say it was close to a year ago, but it was
It
probably like
was.
8 or 9 months ago, when I really started to get more and more involved. And I was just telling Amit backstage, I was like, honestly, when I first started seeing this guy's tweets come across my timeline, I thought he was a complete con artist within like the first few tweets. And then I recognized, I was like, no, this guy's spitting some legitimate facts, one. And then two, he's super genuine and seems super kind and wanted to help people. And that is, I think, one of the kindest things that the most prominent things that I noticed about Amit, and his just eagerness to listen, his eagerness to learn, and his eagerness to create a startup, which I think is really interesting. So we're going to get into a lot of different stuff today. We're going to talk a little bit about who is Amit, just in general. We're going to get into what's Audea, the company he's the CEO and founder of. We're going to get into just what makes him tick, what makes him Amit, what makes him who he is. And so I think it's a great opportunity to kind of get away from the actual stock talk that we always talk about on a day-to-day basis and really dive into the man who is, generally speaking, the one asking the questions on a daily sort of podcast, whether it's the Daily Cowbell or whether that's on Finance Junkies, Palantir Weekly, SoFi Weekly. So
All these random podcasts that just
that you're trying to start, man. It's a hustle, and I that's one of the things I truly admire about you as well, is that big hustle that you have. So, Amit, where did you start, man? Tell us who is Amit. One of the biggest and most difficult questions that I always get, whether it's a job interview or you're just trying to meet somebody, and it's super broad, but how you answer it, I think, can either be extremely succinct or really insightful. So, who is Amit? How would you describe yourself, and who are you as a person?
It's a really good question, really hard question. I've thought about the question a lot. I think the most succinct way to define who I conceptualize myself at 25 years old is someone who is trying to constantly be motivated by the inevitable end of their life, essentially motivated by their mortality. I think when I was in high school, really more junior year of college, I started thinking about death a lot. And, for some reason, this concept of like us not being here one day was really influential to me and not influential to anyone else that was in school. Like when I would talk to my friends about, the fact that we're going to die and we got to do something, we got to make it count, all this stuff, they're like, it doesn't matter that much, right? We're just going to go party. And like, yeah, I partied in college. I enjoyed that stuff. But there was a part of me that was like deeply philosophically oriented into like the nature of existence in and of itself. And I think what that has done for the trajectory of my life so far is that it has forced me to ask the fundamental questions that I think very few people ask themselves, like what is their purpose? Why are they here? These are questions that to not ask yourself makes life very easy because you can just go through the motions. To ask yourself means you have to force yourself to come to an answer, and coming to that answer means running through 1,000 brick walls and bleeding, wide open with your head because you can't really find the answer that easily. So I guess Amit is someone who has tried to answer that question, has to an extent successfully created a vision of how to answer that question, and now is on the path of building something that hopefully before he dies has manifested the answer to that question.
So yeah, when you were kind of explaining, I was just like, man, this guy didn't sound like a lot of fun to be around in middle school and high school times. But I think what you're kind of sensing is you were very mature from a pretty young age, and it feels like that you kind of knew that life was more than just something where you just party every weekend. Like you could have something like, and I see this a lot too, even to this extent, where it's like some people just have this life with purpose and they feel like they have an opportunity to do something and create something and have that, and you only have a set amount of time to do it, so why not get after it today? And you have folks that are a little bit more laid back. They work to party, right? They work to live, and some people, they enjoy the journey like yourself, and they truly want to get after it and kind of create something. So tell us, like, if you can, I don't know how much you give. I think you're pretty transparent about who you are, and you don't try to, you don't try to hide anything. Tell us, like, how you grew up, right? Are you like a very strict brown household in like New York, New Jersey? I mean, I guess I'm just kind of trying to lay the foundation as to like, because I think one thing your parents are extremely supportive, which
Yeah.
I like absolutely love that. And so, I'm just kind of curious, like the upbringing and what you kind of have to say about that.
So I grew up, I would say lower middle class, New Jersey, brown parents. The dichotomy between the parents and how I grew up is they have become incredibly supportive in terms of doing what I want to do. And, my mom wants me to chase my dreams. My dad is always support. Like, I cannot ask for better Indian parents in particular, because most Indian parents are very conservative, force their kids to be doctors, lawyers, engineers. And, they have their reasons for that as well. But I wanted to be an artist, essentially, right? An entrepreneur. And my parents have just been full blown supportive of that. However, they didn't have the best relationship. And, I was talking to this with Tristan today, who's my videographer who works with me. It's like, I think part of the reason I am the way I am is because I had a great childhood. Childhood was great, right? Never had to worry about food, never had to worry about shelter, and never had to worry about these things that never had parents with a drug addiction, alcohol abuse, none of that stuff. But my parents didn't get along the best. And there were a lot of nights just from 5 years old up until 22, 23, where I'm just listening to them argue and fight. And we can get deeper into it, but like that, I think influenced a lot of like, okay, I know what I want my life to be like, and it's not like that. Primarily because they had an arranged marriage, and honestly, they just shouldn't have had an arranged marriage. They're total polar opposites. But I think because of their kind of screwed up relationship, they made sure their kids were like had the ability to just be free and create and not have these restrictions imposed on them, because they knew our childhoods were like embodied with a lot of their fighting that honestly, they just couldn't control because they just disagreed with each other on so many different things. So it was a really nice childhood. I enjoyed it a lot. There were nothing I can complain about outside of the fact that relationship they had definitely impacted, what I decided I wanted to do as I got older.
And so it's really nice and profound. And I feel like I have some similarities, but dissimilarities as well. But at the same time, from my childhood, I mean, specifically,
Yeah.
I guess like at what point, I mean, was it something where you had to kind of bring them along on the journey? You're like, hey, mom, dad, like, I'm not your normal, because let's just be frank. I'm going to preface and give you some context. I've met some shithead kids growing up that are like, I have such good idea, but they're very big, like founder mentality, but they had
Lack of
zero
execution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
No,
like,
I already know where you're going with this question. How
Yeah.
did you convince your parents at 22 when you graduated with a stupid business school degree to like let you build this? The thing is, so I did debate in high school, and we can get into some of the debate stuff I did over high school. But the long story short is, by the end of my senior year, I was one of the top 7 debaters in the United States of America. And so I developed this reputation in the debate community, which is a small community, but still a couple 100,000 people across the country, of like, Amit is that guy, and he's like elite at debate. And so as soon as I graduated, I got a business partnership offer by a company called debatedrills.com. The company's still active today, but I left the company about 5 years ago. And the guy who founded it, he was like, hey, do you want to like co-own this company with me, and like we build this enterprise of like teaching debate online? So the idea was like Kumon for debate, but online. So just like a virtual debate classroom. Basically, 2020, when the world collapsed, every startup became an ed tech startup. We were like the first ed tech startup in the debate space. And I joined my freshman year. And the reason I joined my freshman year is because I was like, I just like building shit. For some reason, I like building things. I want to see what I didn't even care about the money that much, which is in hindsight bad, because I never negotiated equity in the fucking company. But like, so I never got the benefits of it. But I love the process of building. So for that 3 or 4 years as I built that, my parents got to see me as an operator, as an execution. They were like, oh, he took his skills in high school that are frankly useless, unless you do something with it. And now he's charging people, $75, $100 an hour to like consult with them about public speaking. And he's building his brand. He's like establishing himself. There's, TED speakers reaching out to him for consulting. And so they saw me go through that. They saw me make money. I paid off a decent amount of my college education. I mean, after sophomore year, I didn't have to borrow a single cent from them when it came to food, car. I bought my first car when I was a junior, all that stuff. And so they saw me not only being able to make money, but being able to build a business, even though it wasn't the biggest business in the world. So when I graduated, and I said, hey, I'm just going to keep doing my consulting, public speaking stuff on the side to pay some bills, but I want to go try to start this new thing. They were just like, all right, we saw what you did in college. Just let's see if you can do, this new thing.
So it sounds like you're a little bit different than a lot of and I know this for a fact because I observed it, and I've, that's why eventually I, followed into your message, and I'm a huge fan of yours. But like initially I was just like, okay, this kid's just got a lot of big ideas. He's not going to be able to, and that was like obviously first impressions, right? And I feel like the internet unfortunately gives you judgmental, so in my head,
No,
unfortunately,
but you should be
probably,
skeptical because you probably caught me around the time where I started to raise money publicly on YouTube, and everyone should be skeptical of anyone asking for money. And I didn't want to do it, but then when I realized, holy crap, there's a lot of people that are interested in this could actually get the job done.
Well, what I will say is like you did approach me as well, but you did not do it in a scammy manner. So at that point, like I had been like, oh, this is actually legit. So like it wasn't like I met you and then a few days later you were like, hey, it was like I had seen it and I was just like, okay, this seems a little bit off. Like, who knows? But then I was like, oh no, this is like a real legit, progressing forward thing. And then you had kind of approached me. But I think one of the things I want to clarify, going back to kind of the previous question, is like, so it didn't seem like you were a shithead kid, right? Like a lot of these people that I met that are like the polar opposites, where I'm like, oh, this kid's got an idea. He's not actually going to execute it, but he's got this idea. They're all kind of like shithead kids. Like, but it seemed like from the get-go, were you like a straight A student or were you like a C plus? Like school didn't really interest you, but debate did. And so like your parents were able to see that conviction that you had and that execution ability you had on a particular thing, but maybe you weren't the best at school. Like I'm just trying to understand the full range.
So here's the nuanced answer to this. My mom stressed education so much when I was little. So yes, straight A student, but when I sucked in certain classes, so I remember, the first time I got an F on an exam, like just straight up, I failed. And I texted her the picture of the exam. She wasn't disappointed in me, It was never the traditional Indian mentality is like, you fucking idiot. You like, why don't you study hard? She was just like, hey, did you think you prepared for that test? And honestly, I was like, no, not really. She was like, well, just prepare next time. Right. And it was that level of like, she's disappointed in my lack of effort, not in me actually failing. And that's such a big distinction. Like your parents being disappointed in you not trying, not the result of you not trying. It changes everything. It was almost like the Inception moment for me, where the guy in Inception, he finally realizes his dad, was sad that he tried to be like him, not disappointed, right? And it's like, it changes your perspective because like my parents don't hate me. They hate that I'm not trying hard enough. But outside of that, I got a lot of straight A's. Now, the nuanced answer to this is by the time I became a junior, I stopped caring about the conventional way that people got good grades, which is like study hard. And so I started, to be quite frank, cheating a lot in high school because I saw high school as a game. I was traveling across the country every single weekend in international debate formats. I was like having fun, living my life. I was really learning. And then I go to biology and they're like, you have to memorize what a ribosome is. And I was just like, this is stupid, right? So that's when I started like, and me and my friends in our class, we all cooperated, if you don't want to call it cheating. That's when I realized like, this is stupid. I'm just going to like get the grades and I don't really care. But in the pursuit of getting the grades and I don't really care, I made sure to get good grades, even if I had to do the risky stuff to get good grades, like cooperating. And that riskiness of still getting to the end point, I think has been the defining factor of my life as a startup founder, because I don't think of that cooperation as unethical. I look back on it and saying, I just have to get the grade. Here's a different way to get there. And yes, some people may not like how I get there, but I'm going to figure out a way to still get there. And I think that's what building a startup is, building a business. Like you have to find a way to get there at the end of the day. And if you can find a way to get there and take the unconventional route, like build a YouTube channel and somehow raise money from angel investors across the world, because every VC fund is investing in FTX instead of a bright kid with a young idea, then you got to go that way. So I think a lot of that stuff in high school and those straight A's kind of, formulated the basis for how I'm trying to build the company today.
Yeah, I don't necessarily fault you for maybe the way that you approached and got the grades that you did. I'm a firm believer, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. I'm a firm believer that the way that we train students at a young age, or just kids in general, is completely broken. And I have this debate all the time with my sister, who's a teacher.
The same thing with me, right? Yeah, but the funny thing is, Matt, my sister, when she was getting a master's degree last year, she was cheating in all of her master's and she's a teacher. And I'm like, wait a second. And she just laughed about it because it's like, it's stupid, right? And now you got ChatGPT. It's like, it's about to get really stupid, right?
Right. Oh man, I just had a good thought. But I completely lost it. But I think what it was around, and I probably will remember it in a second, was, so explain a little bit about the timeline. So you were doing this startup for the debate until your junior.
Yeah, so I started when I was 18 and I left it when I was 20. So it was about 2.5 years.
Okay. And that's how you got your car and everything and the like. And so this is 4 years ago, I guess, or is this? I'm trying to remember with the
so I graduated high school, start the thing in 2016. I leave by 2018, and that wasn't really enough money, to be honest. I mean, it paid some bills. By 2018, I decided to start my own consulting firm. So I built up enough reputation after leaving that company, because the reason I left is because I did not like the trajectory in which the company was going. I voiced my opinions to the founder, and he was like, "Nope, we can't go the other way. Either it's my way or the highway." And I was like, "Yeah, all right, I'll just, it's not an ugly breakup. It's like I just, I'll do my own thing." And so then I started my own consulting firm, and that's what allowed me to start like getting the car and paying for an apartment on campus, because that just started taking off. Because honestly, I remember the first time, Matt, I was approaching a client. This is my first client I'm closing, not like, because the company used to close clients for me and then I would facilitate the work. Now you're on your own. You eat what you kill, right? And I'm on FaceTime with this Indian father in California, and I'm like, all right, let's do $850 a month for meeting 3 times a week, which if you do the math, that's like 60 something dollars an hour, which is crazy, right? $60 an hour for like a 19-year-old or whatever. And he says, let me talk about my wife. He comes back 10 minutes later. He's like, can we do 800 for 3 times a week, which is still a crazy amount of money, or 2 hours a week, whatever it is. And I'm like, yeah, deal. And then that's a 12-month contract. So it's $9,600, right? 800 times 12. I go downstairs and I'm like, Dad, I just got like a $10,000 contract on FaceTime. He's like, what are you talking about? I was like, I just closed this dude in California who wants like to help his kids for 10 grand. And like, that was one of those defining moments of like, oh, I can do this shit on my own. Like, how can I get like 10 more clients? And that'd be 50,000, right? And then it just kind of expand from there.
And that's a fun part. So maybe take a step back. So, and then I want to get back into that part, because I agree with you. That's like the most fun part about like actually realizing, hey, like you think that like these businesses and everything are so far-fetched and you're going to struggle so much. And yes, business is a struggle, right? And that sustainability part is probably the hardest part about it. And you know better than anyone, right? So I'm preaching to the choir, but take a step back, and then I want to get back to specifically like building the business and where you kind of went with, say, the consultancy, and then eventually move into the big piece, which is Audea. So did you finish school or no? You eventually realized that that's probably not for you, and you.
No, I finished. I got my degree, but I finished with the stupidest degree ever. It was like business management, right? So it's like a bullshit degree, but I finished. I got.
But why do you think that that's stupid? I mean, for what you're doing.
Well, I mean,
things.
I learned how to run a business better by creating my consulting firm in college than I did in sitting in any of those classes. And I don't want to sound super pretentious about it, but some of those classes, I mean, when I did the math on how much I was paying for them at Rutgers, it was just like, like a trillion YouTube videos would be better than this class right now. But nonetheless, I got the degree because my parents also really wanted me to get the degree.
I don't think that that's necessarily specific to your degree, though, Amit. I'd say the same. I'm a petroleum engineer by education, and I went into petroleum engineering, and I'm like, why didn't we just do these like applications? Like, why did like these real world examples? It's like the way that they applied and gave us real world examples, and then tried to like make it's like super specific. But so in reality, it just was just like when I finally got like one of the things I was best at, one of the things that I'm best at in technical expertise in my company today, I like struggled with massively in college.
Right.
And it was just because like the way that it was taught and the way that anyway, so there's a huge applicability problem aspect to it. You were going to say something and I cut you off.
Yeah, my only like slight pushback on that is like you still did something kind of technical, whereas business is not business is not even finance, right? Finance is a little bit more tech. Business is just like they're like servant leadership, right? And they're teaching you about how to be a leader. And it's like that's like executive level training that no 22-year-old is going to ever need at that stage of their life, right? So it's like I don't know. It wasn't really information that I retained or anything, but I got the degree. So in case everything fails, I can go to
one of the, so I don't read a lot. I'll just be point blank. And then I want to get back to transitioning into, how you got your business. One of the things that I love most about business, because I have a very small business that's very cyclical, depending on the market and stuff like that. You probably see some of the things that I've done on the channel, like have sponsorships and stuff like that. So I want to kind of touch a little bit on that, not for my self-promotion, but just relating back to what you're talking about with the consulting. One of the books that, some of you guys might think it is something that's, I'm not good at reading and I don't read a lot. The things that I am good at are reading financial reports and articles online and stuff like that, but books, not good at. John C. Maxwell made a book called The 5 Levels of Leadership.
Yep.
And it's pretty cool because it's like, you could read all 5 levels day one, but you're going to be like, this is useless, right? Like, just exactly what you're talking about. It's like, you kind of have to realize and go through the steps over time. It's like, you have to start with yourself, then you have to do others, and you have to do teams, and you have to do, and it's like, eventually get to the point where you're leading groups, like big organizations. And it's like, you have to lead leaders, then you have to lead groups, right? It's like that's a huge piece. It's like that's one of the books that I want to continue to read over and over again. I've never gotten past part 2 because I've never really gotten to a place where I'm really leading a team as of yet. But I you know, for anybody that's interested in business and long-term kind of thoughts, I think that's a good opportunity to read that. I don't know if you have any other crazy books, but I don't want to go down the book rabbit hole.
I read Failing Forward by John Maxwell, but I don't remember a lot of it. But you know, it was a good book in terms of.
Well, I still need to read 0 to 1, but anyway, I'm struggling with that.
If you watch the 1 hour Peter Thiel lecture on YouTube, you'll get the gist of it.
It's better. You think it's better than? Oh, okay.
Like in 40 minutes, he summarizes it.
I like. Maybe I'll listen to that going to bed. So I've like stumbled across some things where I'll just like put it on and then I'll wake up the next morning feeling like a brand new person. Like I listen to lots of Jim Rohn, and I don't know if you listen to Jim Rohn, but it's like he was one of the guys that trained Tony Robbins.
Yep.
And awesome. So when you listen to him, you're like, oh wow, like this dude's pretty dope. But anyway, so for a while I was like binge listening to that probably once or twice a month. One of the ones that I really enjoyed. But getting back to specifically your consultancy is like one of the things that I really love most about business is like one that like it clicks. Hey, I could actually close deals. Hey, I could actually get money. And the thing that I love most, and maybe this can help transition into turning it back to you and then eventually transitioning into Audea, is like you start off and you're making like $200 here, $400 there. And then I was very similar to you. Like the big deal that I closed in 2021, it was like, sure, we're going to do 5-6 videos for 10 grand. And I'm like, well, it was 2 of us. So it was 20 grand, but we split it. Right. So it was like
a lot of money.
Yeah. I was like, damn. Okay. Like 5-6 videos, 10 grand. Like this is dope. That's like 1,500 to $2,000 a video. Of course, I had to do some TikToks and, you know, Instagram reels, all that crap. But at the end of the day, like learned a lot about the company. It was steady because it's not just like one and done. You get to learn a little bit, dive deep, and that adds more value over time. But the thing that I loved most, it was just like, man, like if I could figure out a way, like I'm not good at editing. I'm just point blank. You probably see it in my videos. I'm very like point and shoot, like not good at editing. Yeah. To me, I'm more of like the content is like my voice and my message, and that's really it. I'm not trying to entertain people. Like hopefully it is entertaining. Hopefully they learn. But the thing that I love most, after obviously realizing that I could create my own business, I could create a like startup or what have you, is employing other people.
Yeah.
And there was a guy, an editor that I was hiring, and I paid him $75 every time he edited a video. And it was super cool. I just upload on I forget what website it was, but it's basically some Dropbox website almost. And it was like, upload the clips, kind of give them a little like 2 to 3 sentences of what I wanted. And, you know, maybe some screenshots. And within an hour or two, well, it wasn't really an hour or two. It was like generally speaking overnight, because I'd do it before I go to bed, and he was in India. So by the time he went to bed, he would have it done. And it was awesome because my margins were still great. I was helping and pull like $75 to this dude was awesome. And I would feel great. Like if I was able to do it a couple times a week, like it was a blast. And he was like, oh dude, like I saw him upgrade all of his like studio equipment and like computer equipment and stuff like that. And yeah, it was really cool. And a couple times, I forget why we hired another person. We were paying her like $100 a month or something like that. And it was something super small. She just did like 1 or 2 hours of work a month, but it was like, it felt really good. I was like, my margins are still great. Right. And it's helping me, 1. And then 2, being able to delegate allows me to focus on what I'm best at, which is 1, shooting the actual videos themselves. And then 2, helping to get the clients. Now I was trying to, at some point, you know, hire somebody and split the revenue with them of whatever clients they brought in. But that was like the thing that I loved most. But I want to transition back to you because we kind of cut off and went into a deep tangent about a bunch of different stuff. But going back to the consultancy. So you're junior year of college, you start the consultancy, you're creating these $10,000 contracts. What happened after that? Like, how has it gone scaling from that into eventually getting to the point where you're like, I have this bigger idea that I need to pursue?
Okay, so the consultancy I continued up until 2022. I still have 1 kid that I coach, and he's the only kid I coach. I just went to Kentucky because he qualified for the Tournament of Champions in debate. But outside of that 1 kid, that stopped. So junior year, I started it, and then December of my junior year, I get one of the most interesting calls of my life. There's this guy who calls me. He's like, "Hey, can you coach my daughter?" And I'm like, "No, man, I have so many kids. Like, honestly, I'm just like stressed. I'm trying to like, I just broken up with my girlfriend. So I'm like, oh, I'm trying to get laid every night. Like, I'm just busy. Like, I'm busy. I'm a busy guy now." And that was September. Then November, he calls me back. He's like, "Can you coach my daughter?" I'm just like, all right, bro. Like, how much? Like, what are we? And the number he offered was just absurd. It was like I'd never seen that money in my life. And I'm like, how do you have this much money? Like, what's going on here? And so then I met up with him in person. And apparently the dude owns an entire debate club in northern New Jersey. For those that don't know, northern New Jersey is the rich part of New Jersey. And we worked out a deal where they would become my biggest client for the next 3 years. Like supplying me with like I never had to worry about like finding clients because they have the biggest debate club in New Jersey. Like, they have almost 500 to 1,000 different kids that were just coming to them for debate and public speaking training, and other people as well. And so that became the biggest client that paid the bills as soon as I graduated. So I basically had a job, you know, because that client was like a full-time job essentially as soon as I graduated college. And they wanted me to quit my senior year. They were like, "Bro, just come full-time here. Like, we don't care about your degree. Like, you just start working now." But I still finished the degree. And so I started working with them. During the 2 years, so I've never had a 9 to 5, but that job was basically like a 9 to 5 from 2020 to end of 2022, July 2022-ish. That's when I started building Audia. And so the way I got the idea for Audia, for transitioning into that, is in COVID lockdown time. I started just thinking a lot. I always had this, I'll split it up in 2 ways. We can talk a little bit more about like the actual concept of the idea, then we'll talk about like how like the thing kind of manifested itself over in 2020. I had the idea. I was sitting with myself. I was just thinking about it a lot. And by October 2020, while I was working the side job, I was like, I need a co-founder now, because I just couldn't go to sleep without thinking about it. I was like, if I can recruit a technical co-founder to be convinced of this vision, like maybe I've got a shot. And so I got very lucky. The first person I reached out to took the meeting with me, and they were convinced on the spot. They're like, YouTube of audio makes a lot of sense. Yeah, let's go for it. And like we dated for a couple months, and then we officially decided to become co-founders. And then we launched our MVP by April of 2021, blah, 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 blah. We keep going. So by May of 2022, I quit the consultancy and the biggest client I had, because by then we had raised enough money where I was like, all right, it's time to go all in. So that's kind of the progress of the consultancy from 2018 to 2022. So 4 years. And then when there was enough money and a co-founder, a team, a product in place, 2022 is when I quit the consultancy and just went all in on Audia.
And that's probably around the time that I met you, because at that point, after you quit, you probably started trying to raise the money, and you started.
Well, no. So this is the funny thing. I started raising the money so this is the story. So March, the story of raising the money is we launched the product April 2021. I had 1,000 users, decent traction. I mean, not the most amazing product, but I was like, it's good enough to get a VC to give 1.5 to 2 million in 2021, because 2021 was crazy for funding, right? So like you could say anything and get some money if it was decently communicated. Now, I had no connections to the VC space. I had no daddies from Harvard or Stanford or anything like that. So I had nothing other than like my raw ability to write a cold email that could get into some VC's hands. So I messaged thousands of VCs. These are venture capitalists, a lot of money. They can, just give money to kids with ideas. 30 or 40 of them responded, which has surprised me. And I got meetings with 30 or 40. Like I couldn't believe I was meeting with some of these billion-dollar funds. I guess the cold email was decent enough for them to take a meeting, because they don't take meetings on cold emails. You need warm intros. But every time we got into the meeting, they were like, well, you're not Stanford, you're not Harvard. I mean, I literally had one guy who was like, if you were ex Spotify, I would give you $4 million on the spot. And I was like, really? Like I had to work at a big tech company for you to feel like this is work. So I just got rejected by all the VCs, which is when I started making content, and we can talk about how that kind of built the brand. But by March 2022, we get the first $25,000 check while I'm still working the job. And by May 2022, I think we raised like 150. And I was like, it's not enough, but it's enough for me to quit. And so by May 2022, I decided like I'm going to quit and just take the risk to see if we can raise the extra 150 to get to 300.
And so about, how do I say this lightly? I'm not trying to insult you, because I don't mean it in that way. Was the kickoff of the YouTube and the content really because you were like, hey, like if I'm going to be doing
yes, I already know where you're going with this question. Yes. So like the question is,
so iterate the question for,
right, the question is,
because you're smarter than everybody.
Are you just a slimy kid who wanted to raise money for a startup, and you started a YouTube channel, and then you decided to make a ton of content around these stocks to get people hooked into you, and then eventually you were going to hit them with this, hey, invest in my startup, and then kind of raise the money that way? Yes.
No. My thought
Oh.
process was like, was it a segue? Right? I wasn't going to say the slimy part. That was putting words in my mouth.
Well, yeah, because I think that's how it's perceived, right? It's like you start a channel talking about Palantir, and then out of nowhere your startup comes out. It's like, did you only talk about Palantir to get access to people's attention so that you could pitch them your startup?
So,
right?
Well, let me take a step back because I think this is something I wanted to address in the video, and I don't know if we'll have an opportunity or an interview, and I don't know if I'll have an opportunity. It's not anything bad, but it's like I feel like you before debate, and correct me if I'm wrong because I don't know. Before, like I guess a year or 2 years ago, you didn't really know much about investing, or not so much.
So I started investing in 2019, but I sucked at it. So
okay. So
yeah,
I guess
theoretically, yes, I sucked at it.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I'm not trying to like put you on the spot, make you look bad, but like the thing that I mostly enjoy about you is your transparency about look, like I'm not trying to be Warren. I'm not Warren. Like, but at the same time, the thing that I love most about you is your ability to ask phenomenal questions and get to the good details. And that's what I've kind of noticed. So it's like my question is like, was that kind of your thought processes? You were trying to teach yourself you have this unique skill about asking questions, getting to the dirt, or not in a bad way, but the actual good crunchiness of a conversation in a quick manner and a very eloquent manner. You saw potential in that, and that's why you started YouTube, or was it just like, hey, I have to have content for my Audea?
yeah. So I have an answer that encompasses everything together, including what I've said and what you said. I tried doing YouTube in February of 2021. You can go back to old videos where I'm just talking about random like business topics, not necessarily stocks, but business stuff. Now I've been consuming Meet Kevin and Jeremy and all those guys for like 2 years before. So I was in love and I was a stock market junkie, but I never thought I could like be one of them until I had, invested $25,000 into Palantir. And I was like, I've got 20, 30 grand in the market. I should like see if I should like learn more about it to the point, and then maybe I could kind of make content about it. In February 2021, the content sucked, right? Everything sucked. No, there was no traction. There was one video on Dogecoin that got 210 views, and that was big for me. I was like, why? And that was at the height of Dogecoin meme mania. And I realized, holy crap, YouTube's a search engine. People were searching for Dogecoin. I made a video with the name Dogecoin in the title. People clicked on it. I was like, that was interesting. But I left YouTube for like months, never came back to it. November 2021, I saw a guy on YouTube go from 9 subs to like 40 subs in one day overnight because of his Palantir video. And that was a profound moment for me. I remember exactly where I was. I was right there on that bed, November 15th, 2021, because I was like, no one just goes from 9 to 40. That's an increase of 31 overnight because of one video, right? Because all of his other videos had no views. The Palantir video had views. I already, for the past 5 months, had been investing in Palantir. Now, did I know as much about them as I knew now? No, but I did have 25,000, and I put that screenshot in the first video showing the dates I bought it. It was over the course of months. So I'd already had a belief in the company, CARP, Teal, all that stuff when I invested. That's when I decided, look, I can't raise any money from the VCs. I don't know the most about stocks, as you said. What if I can niche down and try to get my name out there into this big, wide ocean of YouTube and overall the world of the internet by getting really good at speaking about one thing, which is Palantir, which, by the way, has these 3 elements to it. Number 1, it is a philosophically oriented company, and I did debate, so I'm very philosophical. Number 2, has a ton of technical experts in the field. I don't know a lot of the technical stuff from the financials when you talk about valuations, and from the technology, i.e. the stuff Coach Strap talks about, but I can ask good fucking questions because I did debate. So that gets to your point of like, I can get information from them. And number 3, there is a supply-demand imbalance of content on YouTube, meaning there is more demand for content on this company in terms of search volume, traffic, etc., versus the supply. And quite frankly, the supply that existed in 2021, it honestly sucked. No one actually knew what they were talking about for Palantir. And I didn't know that much either, but I was enough a communicator where it sounded like I was able to analyze that stuff more deeply and more in depth. And as you make 4 or 5 videos a day, you really start learning how to analyze a company. All those 3 things came together, and it was my kind of breakout moment to get at least my name out there in the world, to niche down enough, which you kind of got to do on YouTube, because if you don't niche down, it's really hard to get noticed, and use your debate skills to still be able to bring a communicative, interesting, informative, entertaining element to the content and see if people stick. Even if you don't really know about investing, you don't have any results, you never had forget a 20x, you never had a 2x in your life, and you're just a 24-year-old kid who's a broke entrepreneur who's never, been a C-suite executive. Like, you've got nothing going for you other than your communication skills and your ability to niche down and make as much content as possible about this company and make it entertaining. And it fucking worked.
But that's America, right?
That's America.
That's America, right? I feel like that's a phenomenal story, because I feel like and that's kind of why I want to do this, because I feel like, I'm a huge fan of yours, obviously, and I think that you've done a phenomenal job over the past year, which is really the time since I've kind of got to know you. When your YouTube channel started, you started your Twitter in December of 2021.
Yeah.
Like all these different things where it's just like, man, this guy's communication skills is something I could learn from, one. And then two, it was just like, well, I know a little bit about Palantir, which is why I, obviously got involved and saw your stuff, right? And I was just like, how does this guy know? And then I was just like, oh, he's doing a pretty good job of it. He's doing,
and real quick on that, Matt, I used to feel like ashamed that, up until a couple months ago, I was like, damn, the only reason I'm relevant is because of Palantir. It's, that's the only reason people care and know about me. And then I realized, like, it really hit me like a brick a couple months ago. I was like, wait a second. Every single person in entertainment and media has one thing, because all of us are still entertainment at the end of the day, that breaks them, right? If Drake doesn't get a Lil Wayne feature in 2008, no one knows who Drake is. If Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't get James Cameron to cast him as Jack on Titanic, he may not get Inception or Wolf of Wall Street or any, like you all have a moment that breaks you. And if that moment is niche enough, and then you have the ability to sustain the attention, which I think we've done with Palantir Weekly, SoFi Weekly, Finance Junkies, The Morning Open, people show up, so they actually kind of care about me more so than just the initial reason they found me. Then I think you've got long-term attention, but you got to figure out a way to break. And that's like the hardest part.
But I think that you said it earlier with it, it's maybe not exactly like for like, but you were like, look, I did what I had to do in high school to get the grades that I needed to get to, it's everyone's just trying their best to do what they, and then eventually, maybe they won't, but eventually people find them for who they are and like who they are. Right. I mean, I do YouTube not because I'm getting a lot of money and subscribers, right? I've been doing it for 5-6 years and I have half the subscriber count than you do, right? And but I think it's also something I haven't been as consistent with, and I have a 9 to 5 and all those other things, but at the same time, it's like, I never really thought of it as like this guy's trying to, hop on the Palantir train just for hype. I viewed it as you were curious about the company, just like DNA, just like what you do with Enphase, just like what you do with SoFi. Like, I don't view that as like, oh, he's trying to, I view it as, hey, there's a discussion around it. I'm curious. Let me ask, because I have good communication skills and I have this opportunity to kind of like utilize that to get the best conversation out, which I think is why people love, finance junkies. That's why they like your morning opens. It's like your ability to communicate and do well with that.
And I think if I was going for just the clicks, the attention, the views, and building the brand that way, unequivocally, in 2021, I should have been talking about Tesla, right? Because that's what was, but like, I didn't care about Tesla. Like, I genuinely didn't give a fuck, but Palantir, it interested me. Like, it actually interested me. And so it was a little bit of luck that there was also the supply demand imbalance on YouTube. So I could technically fit in, but I also authentically cared about the company. And you put those two together, matched with my personality, maybe you got a shot.
I'm thankful because, I've been investing in Palantir since direct public offering, and I've been working with the company since, I don't know, 2016, 2017. I don't remember what year specifically, but it was basically when my, what company I work for, my company got the deal, right? And so I was one of the first people to get my fingers in it. So, which was a thankful, great opportunity, because it's morphed into this wild, kind of opportunity that I never thought would go public, and it did. And then I was like, I got to buy it. So, but anyway, I felt like I had never really found a Palantir community until I came across you. And then eventually I was just like, wow, there's just like, and that's when I really started to get hyped about Twitter, because I was like, wow, like there's this entire group of people that actually care about the same stock that I do. Before, I was just like tweeting about dividend stocks every once in a while. Yeah, I'm buying some Amazon. Yeah, I'm buying some Google.
It's just kind of boring, right? It's not,
it is like, because nobody was like, and then I would do a little bit of crypto. And so I found a little traction there. But I'm not a crypto guy, because like I was like a very conservative, 5% of the portfolio. But then when I found you guys, I was like, Palantir is still a small portion of the portfolio, right? I have a pretty large portfolio, but it's a
we know, Matt Money. We know
it's a pretty decent size if you think about it. But at the end of the day, I was like, this is cool, because then that's when I got involved in Palantir Weekly and stuff of the like. I give you shit because I'm like, why am I not on this podcast?
But building an online community is difficult, but when it's like lightning in a bottle when it actually is created and there's magic to it,
Yeah. But anyway, I'm kind of curious. So you get it kicked off, you do the YouTube channel, that begins to be, well, let me ask, how quickly did that kind of catch on fire from when you kind of founded Palantir to
So
And
I
now,
got monetized, which is 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours in 19 days. So November 15th to December 6th. Made $750 the first month off of it, and that was just like, oh, 750. But like, I didn't care about the money. Like 750, yeah, that's awesome, that's great. But I was just like, I went up to some of my best friends who they've been supportive of Audia for a long time, and November 2021 we were just struggling a lot, so they saw me going through a lot of struggles, and I was like, guys, like this YouTube channel, like I have 1,000 subscribers, and they're just like, what are you talking about on YouTube? I'm like, that's when the YouTube channel's name was called The Daily Business Show. I was like, I can't use my name. My name is Black. I gotta use The Daily Business Show. They're like, so you just talk about business in front of me? I was like, yeah. They're like, what are you talking about? I was like, there's this company called Palantir. They were just so weird. They're like, what? But like, it happened that quickly. And from there, it took 3 months to get to 10,000 subs in March 2022. And then, yeah, March 22, we started raising money.
that's awesome. Wow.
It was kind of a whirlwind the way it happened. I mean, it was the thing is, and not to give too much away, because I don't want to overspeak too much, but and what we can probably talk about this. We've been struggling with Audia from a marketing and growth perspective over the past couple of months, and literally over the past couple of days. Tristan and I know he's in the chat. We kind of feel like we've figured out a Palantir moment. And what I call a Palantir moment, I will call this for the rest of my life till the day I die. What is the Palantir moment? To me, the Palantir moment is the moment where you recognize that there is an opportunity and you just go all in. And when I realized that there could be a space for a Palantir YouTuber, which would then eventually allow me to be someone on the planet known as Amit, and like people actually kind of care about Amit. I was still working the 9 to 5. So I would drive 60 miles up and down New Jersey 5 times a week, and I would still pump out 4 videos a day. And like the work ethic I had at that time it didn't even feel like work, because I was just like, all right, we got one video, got the next video. There's Palantir bought 14 SPACs. I'm going to analyze every single one of these fucking SPACs and figure out how to bring value in. And it just like I turned into a different gear of just how much value I can bring. That Palantir moment to me was profound, and we haven't had that moment for Audia up until the past couple of days. And now I feel like it might get to a different gear. And I don't know. I've said this a bunch of different times over the past couple of months, but a startup is hard, right? You think you have these moments and then they eventually fade out. I think we actually figured out a Palantir moment, and we'll see it, if we can execute on it. But yeah, YouTube was crazy. It just happened. And now we're trying to make that crazy thing just happen for Audia. So
you've launched now. I guess you got an initial bit of funding that allowed you to kind of get kicked off full time May of 2022. Then you had a secondary round, I guess, in that, or was that?
So we had one round that started July, ended January. So it got extended a little bit because you're allowed to extend it for like legal reasons or whatever. So by end of August, we had raised like 270. By end of January, that same round, we had finished. It was 330. So overall 330, which means we've sold about 6% of the startup.
And that January 23.
Yeah, January 13th.
Okay.
2023.
Okay. Interesting. Awesome. Okay. Well, I guess I'm kind of curious now. So it's like, tell us the biggest struggles, right? So tell us what you've learned from going, because I think that's a huge transition, right? You have this business, it's successful. It's an area where you're literally expertise in.
Yeah.
You're going around the country doing really, really well. And now you're kind of transitioning to this whole new kind of idea, working in the tech space, which you kind of alluded to is not your area of expertise. So you have a co-founder that you sit with, and eventually want to talk to him because I never really see him much, right? He's kind of behind the camera.
He's behind the camera, yep.
So I would love to, I've seen him, in some of your quick videos that you have on Twitter and stuff like that, but I'd love to, bend his ears a little bit. And then eventually, sorry, I know that I'm living the dream. I'm having a great conversation with you. And I'm learning so much.
Are you drinking? Drinking anything a little bit?
No, just I'm gonna cover because they don't sponsor me. Some lemon sparkling water. But yeah, I want to leave people some opportunity to get some questions in the chat, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I think it's been a really good conversation thus far. I want to know kind of what's the biggest transition or thing that you've learned, I guess, over the past 12 months since you've kind of gone at this full time, and where do you think like you've realized is your struggling points and your pain points, and where have you kind of realized your absolute strengths are? I mean, I feel like we've talked about your strengths to a good extent, but curious if there's anything else.
Yeah. So like the consultancy, as you said, like I was a rock star, a superstar. I owned my shit. It was amazing. And then YouTube, to an extent, rock star. I understood the Palantir niche. I could do it, blah, blah, blah. Then you get to the startup and I'm like, I'm going to be the rock star. And it's like, it's been 12 months. And like, you're not the rock star, buddy. Like you got to raise the money, right? That was a cool moment, but that now no one cares. Now go do something. the past 12 months have been really hard because I think we've evolved the product to a really good stage in terms of developments and updates and tech. And we hired a team in India that have just like fantastic engineers, and they've been helping us work out it and in like for relatively cheap. And so we've been able to do a lot of good things on that side. From September to January, we were growing 20% month over month. You may know this because we were attaching ourselves, like many startups do, to a source of traffic that was theoretically unlimited. This is what Airbnb did to Craigslist, Facebook did with Harvard's email database. And when that gets shut off, which inevitably it will be, if you look at every pretty much startup, how they started to solve this kind of chicken and the egg double-sided marketplace problem, then we got stuck. And that happened 3 months ago, right? So for those that don't know, Audia, it's essentially trying to become the YouTube of audio. We think we can make audio searchable, discoverable, monetizable, and create a new platform for creators to ultimately post audio ideas or ideas in one place, and our algorithms get that discovered. To do that, you need creators and consumers. We got a ton of creators. You need the consumers. We were getting a lot of consumers until our traffic source got shut down. So in the past 3 months, me and Tristan, I guess the biggest struggle, to answer the question, is how many times can you bang your head against a brick wall, bleed almost to death, and still not die? And I mean that intellectually more than literally, right? Because it's like you just have to have new ideas. You don't have a boss. You have to make this thing work. Like there were no VCs. I had to figure out how to make this idea of raising money for a startup actually work, how to legally get it incorporated, how to do this whole stuff. And this whole YouTube phenomenon thing just happened in the matter of, it was like the slow progress, and then it was all exponential from there in terms of raising money. And it just happened, right? I made it happen. That was one of the things I have great pride in, because I just figured it out. I made that thing happen. Those tests that I had to cooperate with in college to get done, I figured it out. Like I found a way and I figured it out. When it comes to the startup, I think the biggest struggle has been, I don't know how to figure this out. And the belief in myself is that just like everything in life, including some of my romantic relationships of like, Amit, you're not going to get that girl. And then he figured it out, how to get that girl. It's like, I just have faith in myself that I'll figure it out. And I don't know how. I have an idea of maybe how, but I don't know how. So the biggest struggle over the past 12 months is like, things are going good, then you get punched in the face, i.e. our traffic failing. How do you figure it out? And, we have money. We have money for years. Like, so money's not an issue anymore. It's like that the money can't motivate you to try to, like, if we raise money, it's like, no, you got the money. Now you actually just have to go figure it out. And so that's where we're trying to figure it out.
And so we don't have to dive into it if you don't want to, because I know it's a little bit more in depth, but have you seen user, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for, anemic growth, or is it still kind of like staying consistent? Or
it's been pretty flat, and our investor updates are public, so people have these numbers. It's been pretty flat the past 2 months. From September to December, January, at the peak, we were averaging about 600 DAUs, streaming about 80 hours of audio a day, listening about 700 times a day, giving about 45,000 impressions a day, doing about 413 searches a day. So like not like, crazy stats, but enough to show someone in the terms of the progress from September to January. And they're like, oh, September you were doing 30 listens a day. January you're doing 600 listens a day. It's like, it's not 600,000, but it's enough to see investors be like, oh, this is going in the right direction. You look at the last 2 months updates, it's flat, or not even flat, it's coming down, right? And so that's where it's like, not only you're not going in the right direction, you suck. And like, and this is where the investors have been so amazing about this. And this is why it's cool to raise from angels, is because like, this is just what happens in a startup. I've talked to a lot of them, like, bro, we didn't expect this shit to like go well. It's like, we gave you the money because we bet in you. Like I was talking to one of our investors from Singapore who invested 25K about 2 weeks ago. I was on FaceTime with him. And I told him, I was like, yeah, man, we're really struggling. He was like, yeah, that happens, bro. You think a platform is just going to let you steal their traffic without them shut? He's like, that shit, it's like, that's not you. That's like, it happened to Jason Calacanis. If you heard the last Olin podcast, his company got shut down by Google after 18 months of making $10 million because Google changed one algorithm and the company was done. And it's just like, the investors have been so supportive because they're like, look, we didn't give the money because we loved Audia. It's like, yeah, Audia is cool, but we saw you on YouTube figure out how to go from 0 people in the world knowing you to tens of thousands. And we saw you present an idea to the world, and we saw the passion in which you presented the idea. And, some of our biggest investors, even to the smallest investors, were like, this 25K is like a penny to me, but I'm giving it to you because I'm like, it's probably going to fail, but if it works, not only is it a massive return because it's a startup, but like, I don't want to give it to anyone else but you. I literally had investors saying, I want you to take this money and see what you can do with it. And that humbles me to no end. And then you've got people across the channel that have given $300, $400, $500 that are like, look, man, I know it's not a lot, but I see your passion, I see your hustle, and I just want to support your dream. And that's why I really want to figure this out. Because when you've raised money from 400 angel investors across the world that just want to support this kid's dream that they don't even know, that they just got some value from some YouTube videos for, that to me proved there was a real authentic relationship I created with the content in the community. And to give them a return is like, I want to do that more than I want to breathe. And so I need to figure this out.
So I'm curious. I remember kind of seeing it a little bit, but what was it, like another audio website that you were getting a lot of the traffic from, and it just kind of...
Yeah, well, we were getting a lot of traffic from StockTwits, which was essentially a Twitter for stocks. We had a lot of audio stocks financial content. So the synergy of just like linking people to Audia from there was like beautiful.
And they then StockTwits cut it out, or...
Yeah, they just were like, we don't want your links on the website. And so I went to the CEO in New York. I literally just went up to his office. He kicked me out, but I went up to it and I was like, hey, can you unban us? And he was just like, no. And I was like, but like, you have all these other stupid spam accounts like posting 10,000 times. Like, why can't we post good, valuable content? And he was like, fuck you, go buy some ads. And I was like, wow, business is ruthless. Like, people don't care.
But I don't do a lot of StockTwits, but I think it's pretty fun. But I post my YouTube links there, no problem. Like, why is it?
Well, we were posting like 500-600 links a day. And so they got annoyed by that. And to me, I'm just like, well, on StockTwits, CNBC, the Wall Street Journal, and Bloomberg, they don't post. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, these are the 3 biggest financial media companies in the world. Why are they not posting in the Twitter for stocks? And I think StockTwits pissed off those companies over the Yahoo Finance, right? They don't put, like, their last post 2013. And it's like, I think there's, for some reason, they pissed off those companies. So those companies just don't give them their content. And I'm like, I literally, I'm on the guy with their community manager because they unbanned us, then they banned us again. I was like, bro, we are your CNBC. I have unlimited amounts of content for you. It's good content. Your users are clicking, and I can see in my back-end analytics, they are staying 70 hours a day. Our average listen duration is 43%. Like, people are not clicking on bullshit like the rest of your websites they're actually clicking on good content, and they want to click on it.
Yeah.
And they just, they refuse to agree. So
interesting.
It sucks. Well, I can't do anything about it, right?
That happens. I'm curious though. I mean, so I don't want to say do this more often, but I think I've learned a lot personally about you, and I've learned a lot about, the beginnings. I guess my question is there something about you that you feel like, I don't want to say you're intentionally hiding, because I don't think you intentionally hide anything, but just hasn't come up yet, that you feel like it could be an opportunity to kind of say, hey, I don't think people know this about me. Like, here it is. And then I want to hop into specifically if you have any questions for me, and then take 1 or 2 questions from the audience. So if you guys would, just poke something up that you want to hear Amit talk about for a couple of minutes, and then I think we'll wrap it up, because I don't want to drag it on and it kind of get boring. I think this has been pretty, as much as we talked for almost, an hour, I feel like it's been pretty action packed, and I don't think there's been a lot of lulls personally. So
something people
don't
start
know. Off, something they don't know about you.
Well, I mean, I know people, understand that I'm incredibly attractive and funny, so I won't say those.
I mean, that's part of the reason why I do Palantir Weekly.
Yeah, so. I mean, of course, that's what we got to do.
Especially
Kelly.
I love my Brownman.
Kelly, what do you? Oh, I already know my question to ask you. I already got it. Perfect. It's in my head. All right. Something people don't know about me. I think trying to do something, a good answer, not something stupid. Okay, here's a good one. I was talking about this with Tristan today. I think people don't know how much Michael Jackson's death affected me. And to do a long story short, he died in 2009. I didn't know who he was. I discovered his music. And most importantly, I discovered his stage presence. And the day I saw him like perform on stage on YouTube in 2009, I was like, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. I was like, that was my moment. It's like, I want to be a performer on stage. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, dancing, singing, talking, whatever. It ended up being speaking. It's like, I want to do that. And I aspired since then to like have that stage presence. And it manifested itself in so many different areas of life. But every time I came back to like when I had an audience, I would perform. And that's why I think the morning opens go well. That's why I think hosting a podcast goes well. It's because like you just want to give that audience their performance. So Michael Jackson's death and his stage presence really influenced me to aspire to that. And my biggest dream is one day I'm on a stadium and I'm kind of giving like a philosophical lecture on life or a stand-up routine, one of those, or an infusion of both, to like 10,000 people at Radio City Music Hall or something. Like that would be like that would be the most important night of my life. It would be better than the night Kelly texted me for the first time. Like that would be the best night ever.
3 years ago, I had the same aspiration, not necessarily to perform, because I feel like I'm not as energetic and I don't have as much charisma I don't have the riz, as they call it, as you youngins call it these days. And I feel like I don't have the articulation skills, or the gravitas, as some people might say. As say somebody like yourself or something of the like. So, but I've always wanted to kind of get myself up to that point where do better, make myself a little bit better, and get to the point where I feel like people could listen to me talk for 30 minutes straight.
Yep.
And, you know, keep people's attention. So anyway, just simple thought there. Any questions for Ian? It could be 2 things.
Yeah, I already got it.
One.
I already got it. What do you think about Kelly?
I don't know what to think. I don't know if she's real. I don't know. At the same time, I know that she's done a lot of podcasts and stuff with you.
Yeah, we quit our podcast. We have to stop it.
Yeah, I was kind of curious. And she's also kind of fallen off the face of the earth. So...
Yeah, I mean, she's going through some personal stuff. We had to stop her podcast because like she had like a bet with me, and I guess I lost the bet. And so as a result of that, like we can't do the podcast anymore. It's like some weird thing for why we can't do the podcast.
Well, I hope she's okay.
I hope she's okay too.
Hopefully it's not bad personal.
But do you think she's like a cool person? Like you don't know anything about her, right? You've never even spoken to her. She's just like this Twitter personality to you.
Yeah, just like a Twitter personality. Like it's interesting because like there's some people that I've met that have been Twitter personalities that I eventually met because they, you know, traders. A lot of traders come through Houston. There's some trading communities in Houston, and I'm not really a trader per se, but I'll still get invited because I guess I'm big enough on Twitter that people know who I am. So, and I'll get invited by some of these people. And so I've met like the blonde broker. I've met in person. I've met
really.
Chad.
That's cool. She's cool.
Erin's really, really cool. And then there's a few others that I've met that I like haven't really talked to more intimately, like Matt, who's from Traders in Paradise, who runs Rocket Scooter. He lives literally a couple blocks from here, so I go out with him every once in a while. I met Sim, which is Simply Safe Trades, I guess, or not Simply Safe, Simp Trades or Sniper Sim, whatever the heck she calls herself. I met her briefly. Doesn't really have too much of a conversation, but met her. Yeah, just met a bunch of cool folks, and so it's pretty cool to be able to put the face of the name, see who's real, see who's not. That's also fun because
I haven't like FaceTime Kelly in months, so I don't know if she's real anymore. But
Kelly might be AI.
Fake, she might be AI. That's probably what.
You got to ask another question. I don't, you know, not saying that was a bad question, but
okay, what is your net worth?
Oh, it's not that much. It's like just probably north of 7 figures. Not a lot.
Like a little bit above $1 million.
Yeah.
That's a fucking crazy, bro. At 31 or whatever, people don't have like 40,000 in the bank. That's like insane.
It was tough because like it wasn't after 2022. It was not, and I've just crawled myself back.
Oh yeah, you told me it was bad for a while.
So it was pretty crazy. It was like in 2021 was a very diabolical year because I lost like 50, 60 grand. Writing cover calls, naked calls on GameStop. So that was kind of a kick in the nuts. And then the rest of 2021 did really, really well. And then the market kind of came down. And I think with like after getting bonuses and stuff like that in April of 2022, I hit $1 million. But we all know how the rest of 2022 turned out, like not really good. And so it's really just gotten to the point now where it's kind of turned itself around. And I'm back over $1 million again. But I remember making a quick video, and it was actually a lot of people like ask because like I still get some people. My YouTube channel is a lot of churn because I don't really stick to one specific thing. I'll like whatever just interests me, I'll kind of make a video about. But I used to do specific like dividend updates or portfolio updates where I would post my net worth. And so if you go back, I mean, you've been through all my content, right? So yeah. It literally was like, once I got to the $1 million mark, I was like, this is stupid. Like as much as I could put 2 commas on my video thumbnails and stuff like that and be able to get like more viewers and stuff, it's like, that's not the type of audience that I want to attract.
Yeah.
Like I want to attract people that actually truly care about investing, not like, dude, this dude's 31. Like he must like have Lambo and he must like as much as I joke about when Lambo and stuff, it's like, I really don't care about that stuff. Yeah, I know, here you are. But it's like that weirdness of like, I felt like to an extent I was using my thumbnails to try to attract people and hope that they would stay. When in reality, it's like, if I just use my actual like knowledge and ability to kind of portray and communicate things across. Hopefully it might happen slower, but I'll have a better community because of
Yep.
it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I've noticed a few people drop off because I no longer post my net worth. But at the same time, it's like I also don't need to become a target for anyone. So
it's also not as relatable, man. Like when you see someone like me, Kevin, buy a jet, it's like the one thing I love about my story, if I ever get to influence other startup founders, is like, yo, you don't need the VCs. It's going to be a lot of hard work to build content and community, but you can get people's attention and get them to invest in you. You don't need the venture capitalist that you're 99% likely never going to get. It's relatable. Like, but a Stanford kid, I'm like, oh, we just took some meetings in the valley. It's like no one's gonna like that. Just doesn't happen. So for you, someone who's built it on your own, it's more relatable versus someone and not bragging about it. But if the audience knows you, they know your story versus me, Kevin, literally, buying a jet and with his audience's money. It's just, it's not.
And it's interesting because I struggle with this personally. Is like a lot of my family members did real estate, and so like my grandfather did real estate, and a lot of my other family members are like big into real estate. So that's where majority of the people that I know invest. And so a lot of them were always like the stock market's a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
But I'm like, but then I'm reading about all these other people. So like I learned a lot about dividend investing and just investing in general based off of, because I grew up around the real estate piece, like, and knew that was a path I could go down, which now I'm kind of starting to get down that journey. But it's like at the same time, I was like, there's got to be some more to it because a lot of these rich dudes also invest in the stock market. And that's what I kind of like taught myself and went to the penny stocks and dividends only. And now I'm like, okay, if I just put SPY and then have a little bit of speculative portfolio, eventually, I'll be one Lambo and all that jazz. So,
right.
This has been an interesting journey over the past 10 years from literally having $0. I was fortunate, I was fortunate my parents paid for my school and my grandparents paid for a little bit of it. So I didn't really have a lot of debt coming out other than self-inflicted debt, whether it was cars or something like that, which I wasn't really into. But it was nice to be able to kind of jumpstart and start off with a really good degree. And get myself down the right path, move to Houston and start up. So it's been
income tax, man.
Yeah, it's been a fun 10 years for sure. I lived in Trinidad for a little bit. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay.
You got to do a whole podcast one day about your life in Trinidad. It's going to be a good one.
Man, I miss that place. I've
never been there, but it seems like it's cool.
It's you'd probably expect like that it's a lot more, and then we'll enter with some questions that I saw. You'd probably expect it to be a little bit more tropical, and it's like there's beaches there and there's palm trees and but it's very industrialized. You have to think like it's been a major exporter of oil and natural gas for a very long time, which is the reason why I was there, right? I mean, a lot of the GDP, the company I work for is about 30% of the GDP of Trinidad and Tobago. Like that, their involvement with it is about 30%. And so, sorry, I'm not drinking. It's a lime seltzer. So like without it, and 60% of Trinidad's GDP is oil and gas. So you think about it, it's like without oil and gas, Trinidad is not as wealthy of a country, just like Venezuela, and it's one of those places. So with that, it's heavily influenced by the oil and gas trade and very industrialized because of that.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
But it's a cool place, beautiful people, inside and out. But questions, let's just see. I thought I saw something.
I think I saw one question. It was like, what would you do differently if you...
Oh, I like this one. This was one of the first ones that I saw. How to maintain your energy and resilience.
Energy, I think it's got to be like, well, you see the opportunity, you go for it, and you recognize, like, the way you maintain energy is you realize the finite nature of this. Like, there's never going to be another time in my life where I get to raise $300,000 from strangers. It's not going to happen. So it's this window of 25 to 30 where I have the opportunity. 5 years, either it works, it doesn't work, but like the energy is built off the back of knowing you're never going to get this opportunity again. So you better hold it in. The resilience comes from, bro, there have been days when it's been bad, days where I did not want to wake up and get out of bed. Like it's been bad, like some really hard days. I guess the resilience comes from like just believing on those days, I was like, I'll figure it out. And like, I didn't have the answer. I was just like, I'll figure it out. I'll get some food and go think. I'll figure it out. And even when you get the food and you go think, and you still came up with no original thoughts, you're like, I'll figure it out. And somehow, if you just keep going, like we kind of had a breakthrough this week, you kind of figure some stuff out, and you can't be afraid to just try more and more things, and eventually something might work.
I have another silly question that I want to hop on to the last question that I feel like we'll take for the night. Because I've been in this situation where it's like, if you're focused and you have like a business going on, you're able to step out of a box. That's like, I feel like sometimes 9-to-5s kind of like keep you in a box and make you think a certain way, company culture, all that stuff, which can be good or bad, right? Depending on what you're trying to achieve. But it's like, I feel like to an extent, when you're put in these boxes, your entrepreneur mind almost kind of gets shut off.
Yeah.
So it's like, have you felt like, as you've kind of ended your consultancy, which might have been like one track focus, and you've been able to kind of step out of the box and like legit just sit there and just say, I don't know what I have to do today other than maybe I have this meeting. But other than that, I have, 12 hours to kind of figure out how I'm going to hustle as much as possible. Like, boom, 12 hours is now like you thinking about, hey, we have this problem, I have to figure it out. And you have this sort of way that you can now think in the appropriate manner than maybe like what you've been able to do, I guess, when you're doing some of your other stuff, because you were kind of in a box.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think there's two answers. One is the downside of having 12 hours, because it's like, there are some days where you've wasted 12 hours. I use wasted lightly, but like you've just thought for 12 hours. Like you haven't executed on anything, you're just thinking for 12 hours. And it's like at some level, because you're so used to consulting, making money, driving, blah, 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 you're like, that was hustling. So that was not wasting 12 hours. But if you're thinking it's wasting 12 hours. But then on the flip side of it, you're like, well, the reason I raised money, the reason I'm in this situation, the reason investors have trusted me with capital is because they trust that Amit will be able to think in those 12 hours and figure out an answer to his problems. Because like they're trusting in your ability to just figure things out. And so at some level, when you have a free day, or a free day meaning like you have the whole day, you don't have a boss, it's got to be balanced with like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I'm really going to, put myself in a position where I can try to figure out what I'm doing. And then as soon as you get the thought, right, then you execute against it. And if it fails, it fails. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You take the data, you work from it, you move on to the next thing. But that's why I'm in this position, to have the freedom to not have to worry about, the 9-to-5 and just think and create. And thankfully, my parents support me being at home,
Did you see another question? I didn't find one that I thought was worthy of the great Amit.
I think it was, there's like, if you were to do 3 things differently before you started Audia, what would it be?
Oh, I didn't see that one.
I think it was from the same person, the ET FaceTime Home.
Oh yeah, what are the 3 tips you would have given yourself just starting out with Audia? Yeah, I see it right there.
Where's that? Is that towards the bottom?
Yeah, no, it's 11:38 p.m.
Oh, yeah, so it was a while back.
ET FaceTime Home, I think, was the one making these crazy jokes on the SoFi Weekly podcast. ET, that shit still makes me. I don't want to say the joke publicly. It wasn't racist or anything, but it was just such a good joke. It was so good. Okay, what are the 3 tips? Matt, I'm gonna have to tell you off camera. What are the 3 tips you would give yourself just starting out? Number 1, expect for it to be super bumpy, just the ride in general. Number 2, content is a evolving game, and just because you're good at content on YouTube does not mean you're going to be good at content everywhere. So get ready to really try and experiment a lot with the content. And number 3 is like, when things don't work, don't be super hard on yourself. Because I think for sometimes I'm really hard, and there's a certain level of pressure you absolutely need to put on yourself. But it's also like, bro, this is a startup. You're trying to literally take something that was an idea in your head 4 years ago, and you're trying to bring it into the world. Like, shit, a lot of shit's not going to work. Move on. And my co-founder is way better than this than I am. When he's like, shit doesn't work, he's like, all right, let's move on. Right? For me, sometimes it lingers on in my head, but just got to keep moving on.
So you're struggling. You think you struggle a little bit with the try fail?
Yeah, I mean, look, like because I've tried failed so many times that at some level you're like, am I the problem? Is my creativity like, what exactly is the problem?
Well, that's what I think with most of my like relationships with women, but that's a different story for a different day. Okay, interesting.
But in the fate, and this goes back to resiliency. There is no alternative. Either I'm right or I'm wrong, and I have a mentality that I am right, and everyone who disagrees with me is absolutely wrong. And if you're a startup founder, no matter how many times you try, fail, if you're still in the game trying, you think the next time is going to work. Because if you don't, you have conceded that the rest of the world is right and you are wrong. And that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I think I'm right and the rest of the world is wrong. So I got to keep believing that I'm right.
Do you think you're when you explain that, you're thinking very like black and white, or do you? Because I feel like you don't act that way. Like I don't feel like you have that. Like
That type of macho persona to people.
Yeah, like I don't think you're like I'm right always. Everyone else is always wrong.
Well, like definitely. Like Chris corrected me yesterday on the Finance Junkie something when we were talking about FSD or whatever, and like I conceded like I'm wrong, right? Because that I don't know enough about. When it comes to Audia and the audio space,
got it.
I believe I know this more than most. I believe I know this better than Daniel Ek, CEOs. Like I genuinely believe that, and that's with all my cockiness. And so that I have to believe that I'm right. I don't know if I will be executionally right in terms of building this, but I believe that I am right, and that belief is necessary to keep trying and failing and eventually figure out what works.
Okay.
So for Audia,
I haven't interfaced with you in that sort of situation, so that's probably why I've never.
No, but as you said, I'm very humble. I don't know a lot of shit about like price to free cash flow. I'm learning all this stuff. So like if someone corrects me on that, like oil and gas, you know, when you told me, like I saw your tweet today about how many hundreds of millions of barrels are used. I'm like, yeah, I didn't know that. Matt knows a lot more than that. I can't say I'm right about that, right?
Yeah. Well, I did want to hop onto this question because I remember, and I still in retrospect, I'm like, damn, I wish, right? But it was interesting. Like I had it when you approached me May or June of last year. I didn't really know you as of yet, and I didn't really know what the heck was going on. And then it was like finally, I think you crossed some sort of threshold, and I don't know if you guys put it on pause or what, but I didn't realize you had it open until the January timeframe. Then you mentioned it in a video. So anyway, that's why I didn't invest in like May, June when you approached me initially. And then I saw other people and I'm like, man, am I going to regret this? Like, but at the time I still didn't know you as of yet. I don't even think I'd been on Palantir Weekly at that point yet. Like I just kind of had gotten introduced to you. And like I said, you did it very eloquently. It wasn't scammy by any means. And then when I was looking at it and you were mentioning it in December, because you were like, we're just trying to raise the last few dollars. I was purchasing that vacation home and I was like, well, I can't really make any transactions at the moment. And then
let me just show it right now. I mean, this is really simple. This is the answer to your question.
Sure.
Yo, April 29th, any chance you down to still invest? I know the market is shit, but like I'm gonna go to the moon, so I need 2 Google shares from your 5K and let's do it. You said, I appreciate it, man. I don't want to take on that risk. Money is going to the market. I'll help with sweat any way I can. And I was like, all right, gotcha. That's it.
And that was when? Oh, it was like
that was May 25th, 2022.
So the timeline is pretty good. But yeah, like that was probably within a few weeks of me kind of like knowing and about you in any sort of shape or form. Like I said, I hadn't been on Palantir Weekly as of yet. And wow, you're quick with the DM. I gotta watch what I say.
That's when Google was 2,500 a share, because I said 2 Google shares is 5K. Google was 2,500. Goodness, I remember because Google was falling below 2,000. Remember before they did the split and everyone was
split in 20 for 1. Yeah, crap. But anyway, yeah, that makes me kind of think. But if there's another round, like I'm sitting on cash right now, but I might buy my personal residence.
The thing is, you know, we don't get to the next. We've raised enough money. We don't get to the next round. Like literally, we cannot raise another crowdfunding round. The thing about how we raised the money was we did it uniquely with crowdfunding. And so it was an opportunity for non-accredited investors to invest. And we don't get to do that again. So the only other time we'll be able to raise money, which I will gladly include you in, is if we get money from the big dogs. And so if we get to our seed round, which is probably 1.5 to 2 million, if that happens in the next 18 months, then I'm sure there'll be space. But like literally the best time for you to invest will be, we have proven we can get to the next level. And so that's when
some of that risk will be off.
Your risk will be mitigated a little bit more.
Yeah. Which is, I don't like to invest in like the very beginnings. I like to invest in things like Palantir when it's like the ideas are getting kind of sought out. And same thing with Rocket Lab. It's like they've launched at that point when I started investing 20 times already. It's like, okay, you're kind of good. You kind of know what you got. Yeah. I do have one last question. We'll kind of end it. I've never really thought about this, but maybe it's something I need to do more. I don't really do a lot of interviews on the channel. Like I don't really bring people on, but I think it's something I want to start doing a little bit more. I'm going to like almost give, you know, when like middle school, high school, they used to do like popcorn reading where you'd read like a sentence or something like that. And then they'd make you popcorn and give it to somebody else to read.
All right, cool.
Who are you having popcorn to? Who do you want me to interview next? It could go anyway, right? It's like, oh, it could be cool to hear Chris, but it could also be like, man, who can Matt really get on?
To those guys already? Yeah, it's like Kelly. No, Not Kelly. She won't even get on the camera.
She get on camera with you. Why she won't get on camera with me? I mean,
She doesn't get on camera with anybody. I mean, even those, we never put those videos out there. She was like afraid to put those videos out there. So
oh, I didn't know that.
it was only audio. You know, there was like some screenshots or whatever. But if you can get that trading girl, if that's possible, that would be super cool.
Which one? Blonde broker?
One of them. Yeah, I'm assuming blonde broker. A blonde broker. Yeah, her. That would be cool.
Yeah.
That would be dope. Sachin could definitely be dope. Just because Sachin, I think people don't know how established he is in like the private equity space, and like that.
I'm just afraid he's gonna tell everyone who I work for again.
Yeah, that was hilarious when he did that. He was just like,
I'm like, by the way, Sachin, like in the DMs, I'm like, nobody really knows, but he's like, yeah, I could tell that's who you work for. And then the next, like, and I'm like, damn, I'm like, I outed myself, but like, I can't feel that bad, right? Like, I can't expect everyone to keep it a secret. And I think it's slipped up so many times. It's been over 5 or 6 times where I've probably mentioned it by accident. Sachin's mentioned it. There used to be a guy I would stream with every Friday. He's mentioned it like a trillion times. Him and I don't really chat all too much anymore. He's off doing his own thing. But yeah, it's not hard to find out who I work for. You could probably just go on. I mean, my Twitter handle now is my actual full legit name. You could go on Twitter and find that out, and then go to LinkedIn, and you could probably find it within like 2 seconds. But anyway, okay. Well, I will. I already asked Blonde Broker to kind of come on, so I'm curious if she'll ever respond. But yeah, I'll try to see some of these other folks. I'm curious where else I can kind of take it. Satya. That's the thing. I do the sponsored videos with like the gold resource folks and stuff of the like, and eventually I'd like to kind of get like Peter Beck and stuff like that on here. But at that point, it's like, do you just do a Rocket Lab weekly with Peter Beck? But anyway, all right, man. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, some people learn some stuff, and I will see you tomorrow for Palantir Weekly.
Palantir Weekly tomorrow. Be there.
Be there. Be square.
Love it. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Cheers.
Cheers.